I find typically when you're doing animation, you're not doing anything for real. Like you're not flying, you're not driving the car. You're not flying through space. You're not, soaring over Manhattan.
You're not a duck.
You're not a
Like, I keep telling you that.
You're not a duck. Hi, I'm Kristen Maldonado from Pop Culture Planet. First of all, I wanted to say, Keegan, congrats on the Super Mario Brothers love at the Golden Globes.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
Of course, and Awkwafina, you probably will not remember me, but I actually worked on Girl Code back in the day.
What?
The social lead.
Yes, I think I do. Your name sounded familiar as it was read.
So yeah, I remember we worked on like a New Year's shoot back in the day. For
Yeah,
Girl
sure.
Code.
Yeah.
It was like,
Nice to
oh,
see
look
you
at her,
again.
she's killing it. I love it.
Oh, thank you. Nice to see you again.
Yes, and so, I mean, I gotta start out. First of all, this movie was so fun, and I love the message of just like, people who maybe are afraid of change, afraid of kind of taking a risk, and then getting out there and having that great adventure in the world. And so I was wondering if there's ever been anything in your lives that maybe you were afraid to do, and then when you did it, you were like, oh yeah, that was all worth it.
I can't even think of anything specific right now, but I feel like I do it all the time. I feel like sometimes there's a choice that you'll make when you're acting. There might be like a choice that you make on the fly and go, "Am I about to do this?"
Yeah.
And then you do it, and then it works out, or sometimes that idea. It feels like it didn't work out, but it inspired another idea. And then that other idea ends up being in the TV show or in the movie because it inspired somebody to think, maybe not that, but this. It's still important to get it out there.
Totally.
Yeah, that's what I think,
Yeah.
I mean, most of my career, I have felt that way. Leaving home to go to college. I knew I was going to do it. I was very excited to do it. But also you go like, is this insane? Like just an 18-year-old girl just leaving and going to a college campus filled with hormonal boys seems like a bad, now that I think back, I'm like, that's a terrible idea.
Where did you go to college?
Philadelphia. I went to Philadelphia too.
Wow,
West Philly.
That's a real
It
city.
was legit.
Yeah.
And I was a country girl.
Yeah. And I moved from Pakistan to Iowa to go to college on my own. And that felt very scary. And then, doing stand-up for the first time felt really scary. And it felt scary for years and years. So I think, you just have to think about like the next step. At least for me, I can't think about the big picture. I have to be like, what's the next thing I got to do? All right, I'll just do that. And then from there, figure out the next thing.
I guess for me, it's like in the summer seasons, when do you debut the shorts? You know what I mean? When are you then bold enough to wear the shorts? Because you don't want to be doing too much, but then it's really hot. And then when do you stop doing the shorts?
Then you stop doing the shorts.
You're doing the shorts in October. We're in December. I'm wearing shorts, basically.
How did you come up with the premise for Migration? What inspired you?
Chris Meledandri, who is the guy who created Illumination and produced all the movies, so Despicable Me, Minions, Mario, and everything, Sing, and all of these. And he read an article in a newspaper about ducks and how most of them started they stopped migrating. They preferred to stay in their pond because they were too lazy, because winter was becoming warmer, so they preferred to stay home because they didn't have to migrate anymore. And they chose to say, okay, we don't have to do it, so let's stay home. And for some reason, he related, he was relating that a lot to himself and his life and the way he, if he had the chance of not doing things, that he would get into, this routine as well. And there's a father who wants to stay home, and when the mother is more like, we need to challenge life, we can't just stay like that. If we want to grow, especially our kids, we need to, change and everything and confront ourselves to the challenge of life. He came to me with this idea, with his pitch, and that's how sort of I got on the project, thinking, well, I love ducks, I love the idea of a film, and the fact that we are telling this story through the eyes of ducks was also a very interesting idea, and there was this fable aspect to it that sort of was very exciting. And so that's how it sort of was born.
And it's true. I mean, if someone's like, do you want to go somewhere, you want to stay home? I mean,
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, I'm going to say I'll stay home.
Yeah. And that's the trick, because you know that deep within you should go out, but there's something screaming inside you of stay home and read a book or just watch a movie, but just, if you go out, you will be happy about it, but but it's going to be hard and painful.
You guys have both done voice acting and, the screen acting. So is there a big difference for you? Do you feel like one's easier than the other?
They're challenging in different ways. I think that going to set and acting with your fellow actors is really rewarding. You build energy together. You create the scene together. You have the other person to look at and react to, and it's a collaboration like in the moment. And the voice acting, you kind of have to like imagine how the dialogue is going in your mind and think about, there's just so much more active imagination that has to happen.
Yeah.
Also, I find typically when you're doing animation, you're not doing anything for real. Like you're not flying, you're not driving the car. You're not flying through space. You're not, soaring over Manhattan.
You're not a duck.
You're not a
Like, I keep telling you that.
You're not a duck.
So your imagination really has to come into play.
Yeah, but the advantage is that you get a lot more cracks at it. If you do a scene, if I act in a scene and I feel like I didn't do my best, that's probably it.
Yeah.
But here, a year later, you can think of an idea and be like, oh, can we do that scene again? I have a new idea for it. So you get a lot more cracks at it, even though you don't have the other actors to work with.
I feel like it's apples and oranges because it's so different, the two things, that there's not one that's necessarily better than the other. I think that sometimes the challenges of live action acting is how subtle you're supposed to be and how subtle you can be, and depending on the shot. Whereas in voiceover work, you can be almost as broad as you want to be because you're trying to match the exaggerated qualities of the characters, of these animated characters. You're trying to fill them up as best you can.
Right.
And so I feel like it's just two different things.
Yes.
And I remember I had to drink a lot of tea because there was lots of woohooing, lots of woohoo when Delroy gets free. But it was also liberating to do in the booth, to be able to kind of just yell and scream in delight at the top of your lungs. So that was a really fun scene for me.
Yeah, definitely.
I'd love to hear about how this cast came together because you have such incredible voice actors in this.
Yeah. No, definitely. I consider myself very lucky to have a chance to meet them and work with them. They taught me so much. The way we did the casting, my producers noticed that I was always like pushing for having actors that shared the same experience as the characters themselves. So for example, Kumail, I kept watching interviews and, like from Kumail or even Elizabeth, and I could see that they had this sort of spirit that they shared with the characters. So Kumail being sort of like, kind of like my comfort zone, and, I can complain if I'm out of it, and sort of like adventure is not my thing. Well, Elizabeth Banks is much more like, whoa, I want to live new things, I want to move, I want to take risks and everything. So I really wanted to make sure that they had this in them, so that they could come on stage and really, participate to the writing of a character, like come with ad libs and not just like read the line, and also like be part of creating the character and have fun with it. And I was very open for them to almost like, come up with ideas that we would incorporate later in the movie. Like, for example, in one session, I was talking to Elizabeth about a scene, like just telling her that now they're flying towards Jamaica, they're just flying, and the kids are in the background and everything. And she said, oh yeah, I can see what they're doing. Like, they're just complaining because they want to take a bathroom break. And she started like portraying Gwen and, just having fun. She was not even recording. But the thing is, I was just laughing hysterically when she was just doing this improvisation. But next time we had written a scene based on what she said. So we used her experience, like her own experience to add in the movie. And all the characters could do that, like when we were explaining them the kind of characters they were. So they had this sort of very natural instinct to add to the characters. So yeah, that was great for that because they really helped defining the characters. Now, I'm not saying that each character is exactly the same, like Danny DeVito is not this weird uncle that just lets himself die in a pond, like just eating and stuff like that. But like it's the same. He could bring so much. He understood the character straight away, and he understood the comedy of it. So he brought so much to ideas to the characters to make it even more funny. Yeah.
That's awesome. And yeah, you really get that whole like, are we there yet, Mom, Dad?
Yeah,
Like car ride, classic car ride. but in the air. I love that. That's so funny. For this film, did you guys have a favorite scene to voice?
Oh man, there's so much crazy young. I kind of think the beginning is my favorite.
Is it?
Well, when they first meet the ducks, and it's like, let's go talk to these other
Yeah,
ducks. You know what
that's
I mean?
exciting.
I think it's kind of calm. It
Yeah.
kind of goes off the rails after that. You know, like it's very
Yeah.
physically challenging
Yeah.
from like a third of the way on.
For the rest of it, I
It's
like
just
a,
yelling.
I actually like a scene later that is also one of the rare non-yelling scenes when we're both in the cage and we've sort of switched roles.
Oh, yeah.
And now I have to talk you. I have to give you
Cheer
the
me
pep
up.
talk. Yeah, I have to cheer you up. And usually, it's the opposite. I found that scene very moving.
The sequence that I loved working on was definitely there were two. There was this moment where they're meeting the herons, which was a very, very interesting scene to do because I'm not going to spoil too much, but it's a sequence that when you watch it the first time, you will feel one way. And once you understand what's happening for real, you can watch it again and you can see, oh, okay, it makes sense. You can watch it two ways. And there's another sequence that I love working on is the way they arrive. Everything that's happening in New York, especially the way they arrive in New York, was very interesting, because on this movie we really wanted to see the world through the eyes of a duck. So there was this thing where a duck can't perceive New York the same way as humans are perceiving it. We see a building, we know it's a pile of rock, and that's it. But the duck, he has no idea what it is, and it's going to be a shock. A building could be a monster for all that he knows. It could be a colossus that's going to eat him, or something like that. So we really wanted to show New York in a way that the audience itself would be scared, and it was mysterious and everything. And the way it was written in the script is that they saw New York from afar, and it was a bit tricky because as soon as the audience see New York, they start seeing the streets and the buildings and everything. So the audience knows what they're going to see, but the characters don't, so they're in advance compared to the characters. So that's why we chose to show New York in a very mysterious way, in the mist, and the buildings are appearing, but it's like shadows, like it's a sleeping giant or it's a monstrous sea monster or something like that. So we could play with that. Yeah, it was really fun to work on those two sequences.
You mentioned, obviously this is a story about the ducks, but none of the people in it speak, which I thought was really interesting. Was that like a very specific choice?
Yeah, it actually, at some point it was even more obvious than this, but it's something that I had this fantasy since a long time because I've done a lot of movies with animals. And I always thought that animals, they have no idea what we're saying. I have dogs, and when I speak to them, there's some words that they understand, but the rest of the time they must hear blah, 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 sit, blah, 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 good dog, and that's all they understand. So I thought it was interesting to try to go in the point of view of dogs and thinking, if they're dogs, they have no idea what humans would be saying. So that's why we reduced as much as we could the dialogues of the human characters to the point where they're not speaking anymore, and they're just acting like animals, like the same way we would perceive. And actually, we tried a version where the humans were talking, but we couldn't understand. So they were talking blah, 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 like that, and we couldn't understand their lines. And to be honest with you, actually, Gugu, there's a character in the movie who is a duck, and he's called Gugu. And the reason he was called like that is because there was a scene where the humans were talking to him, and they were saying something like blah blah blah, goo 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 goo, like that. They were doing this sort of sound that you make when you find someone cute. And so Gugu felt it was his name, Goo Goo Goo, because that's the only thing he could understand, and that was coming back. And so that's the kind of thing we wanted to do. But it was a bit weird, those dialogues. We couldn't understand if they were speaking another language or foreign language. So the audience was a bit confused. So that's why we removed all the dialogue, but kept this idea that the humans are animals, so we can't understand what they're saying.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's so cool to hear that little tidbit of how Gugu got his name.
Yeah, that's a little bit of making of secret. Yeah.
I gotta say, you're both known for having such strong marriages in your personal lives, and I feel like your characters in this film, they're ducks, but they really have such a strong dynamic and a strong connection. And I was just wondering what you feel is the key to that strong relationship.
Respect, compromise,
communication, really being vulnerable about in front of the other person, really letting them see you. You have to really, and that's it's still something you have to be intentional about. But it really is you can't guess what the other person is feeling. Just tell them.
I also tell people like you have to dream about your future together. I think that things break down when you stop seeing that person in your future life. Like I see myself old with my husband. Like there's never I've never not thought about like
that's
being
sweet.
old with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think having projects and seeing and planning a future thing. So this movie actually it's perfect. It's like we have this big project, which is like we have to get to Jamaica.
Yeah.
And we have to do it together.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think is so exciting is, this is an original film, not based off of something else. And I know that that can be kind of hard to make nowadays. And so I was wondering like what that means to you and what you hope people take away from this film.
The fact that it's an original thing is, for me, something really, really great, especially as a director, because you can bring up like new ideas. You're completely free to build everything. It's very stressful because you have no references to anything, so it's a bit scary, but at the same time, it's really exciting. And in this movie, like there was this thing where we really wanted to make it based on real life, like it's not something that's copying another movie. It's really about like family dynamic and something that any family can relate to, and just like this sort of like light-hearted comedy that like anyone can go see and have fun and just take a good moment watching the movie and enjoying it and like the kids watching this film and just coming out and saying, oh, this is you, Dad, or this is you, Mom, or like I completely relate to this character or this character, and especially also like feeling that as a family you can sort of like it's important to get out of your comfort zone, which is sort of like what we're trying to share with this movie, like that you need to face fear, you need to embrace fear. It's important. I know it's a negative sort of like feeling, but at the same time you need to, even if you're scared, you have to get out of your comfort zone, and it's important to do so if you want to grow and evolve and everything. But we treated that with a very comedic aspect, so that hopefully anyone can watch it and have pleasure having this lesson, like taught to them watching the movie.
Elizabeth, I gotta ask, it's been 11 years since the Hunger Games movies dropped, the first one, and now there's been a huge resurgence with the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Like, how does that feel to you? Like, what has been your kind of take on that?
I've actually run into some of the people who are in that movie, and it's been really fun to feel like I randomly am remotely even connected to any of that. But knowing that Francis Lawrence, who directed 3 of our films, was doing the movie, I just knew he was gonna do the world building so well. I love Suzanne Collins. She's the author of The Hunger Games and The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And I'm excited for a new audience to find those books and movies again, because I really love them.
Yeah, I love those movies too. I'm excited about the new one. I haven't been able to see it yet, but I mean, I'm so glad that series is back.
Yeah.
Honestly, made me go rewatch everything again, and I was like, oh, I'm just back in the world. I love it. I love you, Keegan. I mean, you're here celebrating migration, but you got a couple of movies out this month. Wonka, of course. What was it like on that project, and how much chocolate did you actually get to eat on that set?
It's funny. I did eat a fair amount of chocolate. Take to take. You would eat a little bit of chocolate, but if you've seen the movie, then you'll know it's funny. I ate less chocolate than you think in real life. In real life, I ate less chocolate than certainly my character did, if you know what I'm talking about. And it was an absolute delight. It was an absolute delight to work on that project. Yeah.
I gotta say, since I watched it, I've been kind of eating too much candy. Honestly, it's been bad. But yeah. And then I also wanted to ask you, because you've also been slaying the musical game in the last few years, from Jingle Jangle to Schmigadoon to Wonka. Like, was that something you ever kind of expected in your career?
No, I wasn't. I used to sing. I sang when I was in high school, in musicals in high school and stuff like that. But I didn't think that was going to be part of my career. I wanted to be Robert De Niro when I was a kid. I was like, I want to be. I was going to do this serious dramatic acting and make my way that way. But so I was not expecting this. But it's been a pleasant surprise. This little turn in my career.
You both have had such incredible careers, and like I said, Awkwafina, to see you, starting from Girl Code to now, it's like incredible. And so I was just wondering, like, do you guys have like a favorite moment or something you're just really proud of the last decades of your career so far?
Oh, wow. So that's a big one. I think the proudest moments were, you know, I think like surrounding yourself with really cool people that like are there for you, and you watch them grow and they watch you grow.
Yeah.
And the excitement for what is to come, not ever knowing. I think that was like the happiest times.
Wow.
You know, I was in this movie Catch Me If You Can, and you just reminded me that the first time I met Tom Hanks, he just sidled up next to me. He came from behind. I didn't know. And then suddenly I was looking at him and he goes, "Hey, Hanks Banks, Banks Hanks." And I was like, yeah, great. I just thought, it's still one of my favorite moments maybe of all time.
He's the best of
I
us,
was
isn't
like,
he?
he just knows my name even.
How exciting. He taught me how to pose on the red carpet.
Wow.
I was at a thing and he was posing right there, and we sort of spoken very briefly. I don't really know him, just briefly. And I was like, "How do you do red carpets?" And he told me how to do it. And I've been doing that.
Doing it. Yeah.
What do you do?
It was very specific. Left hand in pocket, right foot in front, right hand free, and just
That's right.
look down
You
the
always have to
barrel.
have the 1 foot.
you gotta have the one foot in front.
Yeah.
Now we know the secret sauce.
I agree with you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that it's what's next.
Yeah.
What's going to happen next, and is it going to be? How am I evolving?
Yeah.
But I like what she just said about other people too. Is that
Yeah.
you make friends and you get to watch their career move in a wonderful direction, and that's really kind of where I think I agree with you. It's kind of where my heart and my head are.
And I'm watching you, you know, girl code to Pop Culture Planet. You're on camera now. That's great.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I mean, congratulations to both of you. You guys are killing it, and I just really appreciate your time.
Thank you so
Same.
much. Thank you.
Consider subscribing if you like my videos, and if you want to talk more TV and movies with me outside of the comments section, check out my Patreon at patreon.com/kmaldo. If you like this one, you can check out more of my videos right over here. See ya!